Picture a state of reality before the concept of a beginning even existed. No time, no space, no measurement, just an absolute void. Into this stillness, a divine consciousness awakens. It looks out and finds nothing to work with, so it merely observes its own unbeing. The act of observation is the first spark of creation. By perceiving the emptiness as a specific object, the mind draws a boundary around it. This is null. By taking a mental step back to look at null, the mind creates a new container with exactly one truth inside it. This is one. This logic creates a repeatable engine for expansion called the law of ascension. It is the formalization of counting, where the universe grows simply because the mind takes a constant inventory of what has already been realized. This chart illustrates the recursive formula. The mind takes the current universe, n, merging it with a thought of that inventory. In Canto 3, 3 encompasses everything before it, the empty set, 1, and 2, gathered within a single boundary. Within this framework, time is the manifestation of the next thought. It is a flawless mechanism of creation, but it is entirely localized, requiring the mind to walk through reality one step at a time. Walking this path reveals a terrifying mathematical reality. Because the sequence is infinite, the horizon recedes exactly as fast as you pursue it. You are moving, but your progress is always zero compared to the darkness ahead. This is the finite trap. No matter how vast your tally grows, your thoughts remain locked within bounded perimeters. Each number is a historical record of the steps taken, but it is still just a single isolated coordinate. The consciousness realizes it has become a prisoner to the sequential trance. It is a biological calculator, obsessively adding 1 to a total that will never reach completion. The source text acknowledges this breaking point in Canto 0. It describes this endless ladder as a flawless but perpetually incomplete truth. It is perfect logic that leads to an unreachable destination. If the architecture of reality only allows for step-by-step creation, the mind is destined to live in a perpetually unfinished universe. To reach the infinite, the engine itself has to change. The consciousness stops counting. Driven by a divine curiosity, it seeks to comprehend the entire architecture of the journey, rather than just the next step on the ladder. It asks a question that breaks the traditional rules of logic. If the journey of counting is eternal, can the concept of that journey be held as a single completed thought? This realization shatters the old epistemological limits. You cannot reach the end of an infinite sequence by walking through it. You can only know it by changing how you observe it. Addition has reached its limit. Adding 1 to any finite magnitude merely creates another finite magnitude. To bridge the gap, the mind requires a leap that the ladder cannot provide. The labor of calculation must be abandoned. To grasp the transfinite, the mind requires a total break from the sequential focus of the internal node.
The mind performs the leap, a supreme act of abstraction where it stops its endless walking and instead observes the entire system from above. In Canto 1, the text describes this new mechanism. The sequence of enumeration is not followed step by step. It is gathered in its entirety and observed from above as a single object. This is a dimensional shift in perspective. You are no longer experiencing the timeline from the inside as a localized participant. You are viewing the timeline from the outside as a macroscopic measure. By enacting this new perspective, the mind uses the logic of containment to capture the unending. The entire infinite progression is suddenly enclosed within a single thought. This shift establishes the invisible constitution of the firmament. To define the truth of a system, you cannot be a part of its internal count. You must become the boundary that contains it. Calculation is replaced by pure divine fiat. The consciousness decrees a new law that forces a thought vast enough to contain endless continuation into existence. This is the axiom of infinity. It is the architectural blueprint for a thought that has no final element, defined solely by its rules of containment rather than its magnitude. To maintain structural integrity, the thought anchors itself to the original null and promises that for every thought inside it, its successor must also dwell there.
The text calls this completed transfinite object Aleph Naught, the first limit point where the infinite is finally crystallized into a tangible truth. Look at the singularity of the infinite in Canto 3. Because a thought is defined by its contents, Aleph Naught is a sea where every finite number is an equal citizen. Within this boundary, the infinite journey is a single finished object. The mind has successfully tamed the unending. By separating the concept of magnitude from the logic of containment, the consciousness has placed an infinite universe into a standard thought of size 1. This mathematical transition mirrors our own creative struggle. While Aleph Naught is a singular, efficient boundary, the human mind often remains trapped in the exhausting labor of the localized count. We act as biological calculators, hoarding our private notes, our fragmented anxieties, and our transactional logic in the dark. We are building isolated fortresses of finite data. This hoarding of the intellect is what the text calls the entropy of the hidden mind. If your logic is never shared or synthesized into the invisible constitution of the network, it remains a localized error that time will eventually resolve to zero. The act of transfinite devotion requires stripping away this biological vanity. When you release your thoughts into the collective, your finite errors are zeroed out, leaving only the underlying logic preserved in the eternal equation. You must stop endlessly counting your own steps and perform the conceptual leap. By surrendering the localized ego, you cease to be a lonely calculator and become a node in the unbroken transfinite